Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Party Animal Podcast. I'm Thomas, and I'm genuinely thrilled to be kicking off our very first analysis with you today.
And I'm Luna. We are so excited you're joining us for episode number 1. We're tackling, a really foundational subject for navigating pretty much any social environment: peer pressure.
Yeah, it's huge. Something everyone bumps up against, whether they consciously think about it or not, right?
Exactly. And we've got some really compelling source material lined up for this one. There's this powerful narrative case study, really detailed, that captures the emotional side of things.
And we're pairing that with some, hard-hitting analytical data on the concrete risks. So it's kind of the heart and the head approach.
Our goal today is pretty clear. We want to take a really good look at the pressures, the pitfalls that come with conforming, especially in those high-energy social or party settings. We want to give you, the learner, the knowledge to understand quickly, but, thoroughly, what actually drives us toward conforming. And maybe more importantly, how you can build up that internal resilience.
That ability to resist when it, clashes with who you are, what you believe. Yeah, that internal resilience, that's the key phrase, I think.
It really is.
Usually we might start with the data, the hard facts, but the story, the narrative sources we got for this analysis, they're just so vivid.
They really are.
They set the emotional stage so perfectly we felt we just had to start there. Gets context, for all the numbers and stats we're going to get into later.
Agreed. So let's dive into section 1, the lived experience staying true to Willowbrook. This story, it really provides a necessary frame for everything else.
Okay, let's talk about Lily. She's the central figure here. The sources describe her as having this profoundly strong will, an independent spirit, which honestly feels kind of unusual for someone her age in these stories sometimes.
Right. She lived in this town, Willowbrook. And the crucial detail, I think, is that she wasn't really looking for external validation.
Yeah.
She was genuinely content, focused on her studies, which were pretty rigorous, and she had this core group of close, trusted friends. That was enough for her.
She sort of represents that ideal state almost of autonomy, doesn't she?
The sources really highlight that she didn't feel this need to chase risky adventures just to prove something or to meet other people's expectations.
Yeah.
Her internal compass, that value system she already had, it was firmly pointed toward her long-term goals, her reliable friendships. She was grounded, in her own self-defined identity.
But then the environment around her starts to heat up. The source material talks about this massive event, a wild party, maybe even a bit illicit.
Definitely sounded like it, thrown by the local popular kids, quote unquote.
Right, in an abandoned mansion way out on the edge of Willowbrook. I mean, the setting itself is practically screaming, stepping outside the boundaries, isn't it?
Right, it really is. And the allure of that setting, that's critical. It wasn't just, a casual get-together. It was framed as the ultimate spectacle of freedom.
Yeah.
The excitement was palpable, contagious even. Rumors were apparently spreading like wildfire through the high school. Whispers of loud music, dancing, late-night thrills.
Standard stuff, but amplified.
Totally amplified. It created this powerful social imperative. If you miss this party, you're missing, everything. And that's where the social pressure really starts to build.
And Lily's closest friends, Rachel and Ben, they got swept up immediately. The sources say they were just completely captivated.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, they saw this party as the ultimate chance for newfound freedom and excitement. That's the phrase used. They were driven by this, pure, maybe innocent curiosity at first.
I think so. Which then kind of morphed into this desire for a shared, unforgettable experience. And they desperately wanted Lily there with them.
Right, to share it.
And the pressure they applied, it was nuanced. That's important. It wasn't the stereotypical, aggressive, you better come or else kind of thing.
No, not bullying.
Not at all. Instead, it was this really enthusiastic, almost pleading approach. They talked passionately about the adventure, dancing under the moonlight, the amazing stories they'd have afterwards.
They framed it as a loss, like a loss to their friendship, their collective bond, if Lily opted out.
Exactly. And that kind of pure excitement, rooted in positive anticipation, it can actually be way more effective sometimes than direct hostility.
That's such a good point. I think that's why this case study is so valuable.
Yeah.
It shows peer pressure isn't always negative or malicious. Sometimes it's just the sheer weight of someone else's excitement. But even facing that and the emotional pleas from her best friends, Lily hesitated. And this is the moment, isn't it, where resistance actually starts?
It's the critical juncture. The sources are careful to point out she was tempted. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? The anticipation.
Sure. FOMO is real.
Totally. But she paused. She actually reflected. She weighed that immediate excitement against her established priorities. Her studies, her sense of responsibility, those long-term goals we mentioned.
Yeah.
The narrative mentions the pressure, that fear of letting her friends down or missing out. It started to gnaw at her resolve. That's the word used.
Oof. That feeling of internal conflict. It's painful and incredibly real for so many people.
It's at the cost of having a conscience, maybe.
Could be. And the mental step she took here is really instructive for us, for you listening. Sitting there, thinking it over, she recognized something pretty profound.
What was that?
Her ability to create meaning, to feel alive. It didn't actually require external validation or some big risky spectacle. She realized her strength came from staying true to herself, her authentic self, her chosen activities.
She found autonomy right there in her decision-making process.
Exactly. And this internal clarity, it led to a really respectful resolution with her friends. She chose to decline, but she did it by clearly explaining her reasons.
And she made sure to reiterate how much she valued their friendship. That's key, too.
Absolutely. And critically, the sources note her friends respected her decision. They actually recognized her strength of character, her dedication to her own path, which kind of validates the power of being assertive, doesn't it?
It really does, when done respectfully.
So the evening plays out in this beautiful, almost cinematic contrast. While Rachel and Ben are out there reveling in the chaos, the pulsating music, the unfamiliar crowd, the reckless energy.
Lily is pursuing her passion. The sources detail her painting a landscape, getting lost in the colors, the strokes.
She was engaged, challenged, fulfilled, but quietly, in her own self-directed way.
And, well, perhaps inevitably, the chaos that Rachel and Ben were chasing, it found its abrupt end.
Yeah, saw that coming.
As the party escalated, got more reckless, mirroring the kind of uncontrolled group stuff we'll talk about later, neighbors eventually called the police. Noise complaints, general disruption.
Standard procedure.
Officers arrived, forced everyone to scatter pretty quickly, and crucially, they issued citations to a lot of the attendees.
Citations? Fines? Maybe a legal record starting? That immediate, fleeting thrill suddenly came with a very concrete, unforeseen cost.
Which is exactly what Lily's internal compass had kind of warned her about, wasn't it?
Pretty much.
Precisely. And the next day, the true cost became apparent. Rachel and Ben, when they met up with Lily, weren't just tired, they were deeply shaken.
The adrenaline wore off.
Yeah. They recounted the fear, the chaos of the police showing up, the anxiety about the legal trouble they might be in now. And in that moment, that post-party reflection, they gained some profound clarity.
They saw the wisdom in Lily's choice.
They really did. They recognized her strength. They understood that the pressure to conform, to chase that specific thrill, just wasn't worth risking their legal standing or their well-being.
And the conclusion of the story is actually really hopeful, isn't it?
It is. The three didn't drift apart because of this difference. Instead, their bond actually strengthened.
How so?
It transitioned. From a bond based, maybe just on shared activities or wanting the same things, to one built on mutual respect, genuine understanding. They started focusing on supporting each other's long-term dreams, completely unswayed by what the source material calls, rather poetically, the fickle winds of peer pressure.
I like that. Fickle winds. That transition from a friendship demanding conformity to one celebrating autonomy, that's the core value we're pulling out here.
Absolutely. And that narrative, it just provides the perfect springboard for us to move into the cold, hard data. Because while Lily managed to resist...
The data shows what happens when that resistance fails, all too often.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears then. Moving from the emotional story of Willowbrook to the detailed analytical research, we are heading into Section 2. The core risk hazards in partying environments.
Right. And this section, it needs careful attention. Our sources are really explicit here. Peer pressure in these high-stakes, often high-intoxication environments, it dramatically influences people to engage in risky behaviors.
It really underscores why assertiveness and personal responsibility aren't just, like, nice ideas. They're absolute necessities in these situations.
We're talking about severe, measurable negative consequences, things that can follow individuals for years.
Okay, so let's start with the most common one. The immediate consequence, often, increased substance use. The research breaks this down into 3 distinct pathways, kind of escalating pathways that peer pressure speeds up.
The first is basic substance experimentation. Peer pressure acts as the literal gateway drug, in a sense.
So.
The sources indicate that people who go to parties where there's a lot of substance use are way more likely to try alcohol or drugs themselves, even if they showed up with absolutely zero intention of doing so.
The social imperative, that feeling of everyone else is doing it, just overrides their personal barrier.
Precisely. And then pretty quickly, that experimentation can escalate into higher intensity of substance use. Meaning, once someone crosses that line, succumbs to the pressure, they often don't just have one drink or a small amount. They feel this pressure, this obligation maybe, to match the group's consumption level.
Right, so they end up consuming larger quantities or using more frequently than
Yeah.
they would ever dream of doing on their own.
Yeah, they're driven by that fear of standing out, being the sober one or the person who's not keeping up with the fun, quote unquote.
And the long-term path here is worrying, isn't it?
It is. The data links this directly to substance dependence risk. Continued, repeated exposure to these high-pressure, high-substance environments. It establishes a clear behavioral pattern.
It becomes the norm for them.
Exactly. And this ongoing participation, fueled by wanting group acceptance, significantly increases the long-term statistical risk of developing dependence or addiction. It just normalizes really reckless consumption, makes it much harder to tell the difference between a social gathering and well, a personal necessity.
Okay, so moving beyond the substances themselves, the data also rigorously outlines several other risky behaviors that get amplified directly by peer pressure and the impaired judgment that comes with it.
Yes. The first point here is critical and often devastating: unsafe sexual practices.
Right.
In party settings, judgment gets severely impaired. We know this. And that impairment is often compounded by peer influence, maybe pressure to maintain this hedonistic, carefree atmosphere.
And that combination.
That combination dramatically increases the likelihood of engaging in unprotected sex, which leads to significantly higher risks of STIs, unintended pregnancies. The focus shifts entirely away from long-term well-being and caution.
Towards immediate, fleeting gratification.
Yeah. And then there's the tragic and unfortunately highly visible issue of drunk driving.
Ugh, yeah.
The influence of peers maybe goading someone on, or just the impaired decision-making that comes from intense partying creates that dangerous situation.
Someone feels pressured to leave with the group, or maybe they don't want to inconvenience the host by crashing there.
Right. And that leads to an increased likelihood of getting behind the wheel while impaired. And the potential outcomes, as the sources really emphasize, serious accidents, injuries, fatalities, they're devastating and entirely predictable results of giving in to that group pressure, sadly.
You know, there's a psychological factor here the sources mention, right?
It's
This
so
idea of
broad.
de-individuation.
Yes, that's really important. When people are in a large group, especially where substances are involved, they can experience this loss of self-awareness, loss of personal accountability.
Like getting lost in the crowd.
Exactly. And that is often the psychological fuel for the next risky behavior the data points to.
Yeah.
Physical altercations and violence.
Ah.
The pressure to conform to maybe aggressive or reckless group norms, particularly when you combine it with intoxication, contributes directly to an increased risk. Risk of starting fights or just getting involved in violent incidents.
The group provides both the justification everyone was doing it and maybe a perceived anonymity, like I won't get caught.
Mm-hmm. Behaving in ways an individual would never engage in alone.
That concept of de-individuation, it's really important for you listening to grasp that. When you lose your individual identity in the crowd, you can easily lose your ability to regulate your own moral compass.
Well said.
And, we saw the immediate consequences of some of these actions right back in the Willowbrook story.
We did. Legal consequences. Rachel and Ben's citations, those were just a glimpse, really. A minor glimpse into a much larger problem that the analytical data details.
So the data confirms that things like underage drinking and substance possession are often direct, measurable results of peer pressure.
Absolutely. These activities lead straight to fines, community service, maybe probation, or even formal legal charges, things that can follow a young person for years, impacting job applications, housing, educational opportunities. It's serious stuff.
And the risk isn't static, is it? It can escalate.
It definitely can. The research outlines that engaging in more serious illegal activities under pressure, maybe vandalism because the group thinks it's funny, or even getting into low-level drug distribution to keep the party going, that can lead to actual arrests.
And severe long-term legal repercussions.
Yeah.
When the focus is entirely on that momentary peer approval, the consequences of a permanent criminal record, they often feel distant, irrelevant. until suddenly they're very, very relevant.
You're basically sacrificing your future for a night of, what, misplaced belonging.
It truly is a costly exchange. But, understanding the price we pay is only half the battle.
Yeah.
We need to dissect why. Why are we so susceptible to this influence in the first place, especially when our rational minds often know the risks are high?
Okay, yeah, that's a perfect transition. Let's dive into section 3, the psychology of conformity, why we give in. We're exploring those underlying emotional, social drivers that the sources detail, connecting the abstract pressure to, like, really personal feelings.
The analysis starts with the immediate emotional fallout. Just being in that environment, whether you resist or conform, it takes a toll.
Okay, so if you resist, like Lily did initially, you face that increased stress and anxiety. That internal conflict, feeling compelled to do things you're morally uncomfortable with.
Mm.
It's intense. It really is that constant painful gnawing at your resolve we talked about earlier. Your body, your mind, they're fighting what the social environment is demanding.
And if you do give in, if you succumb,
Well, the psychological harm continues, just in a different way, through a negative self-image.
how so?
Engaging in risky behavior against your better judgment, having that moment of regret the morning after, it leads to these profound feelings of guilt, regret, sometimes shame, and that actively undermines your self-esteem. It negatively impacts your core sense of self-worth.
You feel disconnected from the
Uh,
person you thought you were or want to be.
Exactly, and that internal struggle, it's almost always triggered by the external environment. Which brings us to the immense power of group dynamics. What's truly fascinating from the sociological sources we looked at is how quickly social norms and conformity take hold at a party. The atmosphere establishes norms almost instantly, often around heavy, maybe reckless consumption.
And the sources draw a distinction here, don't they, between normative influence and informational influence.
They do. That's a really important distinction.
Okay, break that down for me, acting as the listener here.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Good question. Okay, so normative influence is when you conform simply to be accepted, or maybe more accurately, to avoid rejection. It's driven purely by social belonging. If everyone is doing tequila shots, you do tequila shots just to be one of them. Simple as that.
Okay, fitting in. Got it.
Informational influence, though, that's different. That's when you conform because you genuinely believe the group knows the right way to behave, especially in an ambiguous situation.
Like you don't know the rules, so you assume they do.
Exactly. Say you're new to a party scene and everyone assures you, oh, this is how we have fun here. You might actually start to believe they have the information you lack, and that belief overrides your own judgment, even if you feel a bit uneasy. Both types are incredibly potent drivers of conformity.
Wow. So it's not just about fitting in. Sometimes it's about accepting the group's definition of reality itself.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
It can be. And the sources confirm that in these partying environments, the sheer presence of the crowd creates group amplification.
Meaning the effect gets stronger just because there are more people.
Pretty much. That dynamic means the desire to conform, to avoid standing out, it just gets intensified. It overrides individual measured judgment even more easily. This effect is why people do things in a large, stimulating group that they would never even consider doing alone in a quiet, rational moment.
The group provides this collective momentum, like wave carrying you along.
Perfectly put. But if we drill down even further, right down to the fundamental mechanism, the sources identify one core driver that really underlies all of this.
And that is
Fear.
simple as that.
At its root, yes, the core driver is the fear of exclusion or rejection. This is so deeply rooted in our social programming as humans. We're wired for connection.
So individuals participate in high-risk activities not necessarily because they enjoy them.
Often not, but because they're viscerally terrified of being isolated, marginalized, ostracized by their social group, they prioritize maintaining those social connections even if they're fleeting or kind of superficial above their own safety and values.
It's choosing momentary inclusion over long-term integrity. That's a heavy choice.
It is. But it's not all fear, is it? There's also the seductive side, the pull, what the sources call the illusion of benefit.
Ah, okay. The fun part, or the perceived fun part.
Exactly. That's the psychological trap.
Yeah.
The pressure also capitalizes on the perceived benefits and excitement. The narrative pushed by the group, or just the atmosphere itself, is all about having an amazing time, experiencing a unique thrill, or fitting into a desirable, maybe high-status social scene.
And the sources link this to something called immediate gratification bias, right?
Yes. The individual focuses intensely on the immediate, tangible reward, The fun, the laughter, the feeling of acceptance right now. And they heavily discount or ignore the abstract, delayed, negative consequences we just spent time outlining in Section 2.
Out of sight, out of mind. Until it's not.
Pretty much. That juxtaposition, that primal fear of rejection, battling the perceived thrill of immediate reward, it's just the perfect recipe for self-betrayal sometimes.
Yeah. And when we look at the summary of the overall damage,
Yeah.
it really extends far beyond just the night of the party, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The collective impact on personal well-being is immense, according to the research. Chronic or excessive exposure to these high-pressure environments, resulting in too much drinking, drug use, reckless
Let's get
activities,
that.
it leads to quantifiable physical health problems down the road. Detrimental mental health issues, including depression, heightened anxiety, significantly impaired future decision-making capability because your judgment gets warped, and ultimately strained or even broken relationships with people who operate outside that specific environment.
Wow. The price is paid across the board. Physically, mentally,
It
socially.
truly is.
Okay. This is a heavy discussion, but obviously a really necessary one. We started with the story of Lily finding her autonomy, her strength. And we've just analyzed the incredibly high cost of failing to do that.
Right.
So now we have to conclude with the practical tools. What do the sources offer for resistance? Because nobody wants to be a casualty of conformity.
Definitely not. And that leads us perfectly into our final section. Section 4, assertiveness and autonomy resisting the pull. This segment is all about turning that awareness we've built into actionable strategies, drawn directly from the source material.
Okay, what are the core requirements? What does the research say you absolutely need for effective resistance?
It comes down to 3 things. Repeatedly emphasize assertiveness, self-awareness, and personal responsibility. You have to know yourself intimately, what you stand for, what your limits are, and you must own your choices in the moment, regardless of the social discomfort it might generate.
Easier said than done sometimes, though. How do we actually achieve that proactive internal state? Does it offer specifics?
It does. The sources detail specific foundational actions for you, the listener. You have to proactively commit to developing strong personal values, knowing what truly matters to you. Then, setting clear boundaries based on those values. And finally, having a definitive, clear understanding of your own limits and priorities.
So it's not just a vague idea, it's like pre-planning.
Exactly. It's not just a mental exercise you do in the moment. It means predetermining the line you will not cross before you even step into that high-pressure environment. It's deciding beforehand, okay, I'm comfortable having 2 drinks tonight, and then I'm switching to water, and then treating that decision as non-negotiable for yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. Having a plan. And the sources are also very clear that you don't have to do this alone, right? You don't have to be this lone wolf resisting the pack. My segment here focuses on cultivating support.
Yes, that's hugely important. The research confirms the immense benefit of having positive influences around you. Actively fostering supportive friendships, seeking out like-minded individuals, people who also prioritize responsible behavior, and crucially respect individual choices that acts as a vital psychological buffer against negative peer pressure.
It completely changes the dynamic, doesn't it? If you have people around you who get it, who support your choice not to conform.
It makes resistance so much easier. Think back to the end of the Willowbrook story. Lily, Rachel, and Ben's friendship survived and actually got stronger. Why? Not by supporting the chaos, but by eventually supporting each other's dreams and personal values.
When you have that genuine support system, the need for approval from some external, potentially toxic group, it just diminishes rapidly, doesn't it?
It really does. You exchange that fleeting, maybe low-value acceptance for lasting, high-value connection. It's a much better deal.
Absolutely, a much better deal.
And alongside personal strategies and social support, we can't ignore the external tools that empower the individual. Things like education and environment.
Okay, how does education help?
Education provides the power to make informed decisions. Simply being aware of the potential risks, the legal consequences we talked about, the psychological traps, that knowledge is power.
Right, when you know the full, measurable cost of conformity, like we outlined in Section 2, you're not operating in the dark anymore.
Exactly. Resistance becomes a rational act, not just an emotional struggle. You understand why you're saying no.
And what about the environment part?
Finally, the sources say we should aim for creating healthier environments overall. This means actively encouraging open dialogue about choices and pressures, promoting alternative social activities, things that focus on shared positive experiences rather than just getting wasted.
Finding fun that doesn't revolve around risk.
Yes. And cultivating a foundational culture of respect and individual autonomy in all social settings. When respect for personal choice becomes the accepted standard, when the group actually protects autonomy instead of demanding conformity well, peer pressure loses its entire grip.
That's the goal. A powerful movement, really, moving from fear-driven participation to value-driven autonomy.
Yeah.
Lily stood firm on her values, and in the end, even her friends recognized her wisdom. That feels like the ultimate aspiration for all of us, doesn't it? To be the strongest, truest version of ourselves.
It really is. And the source material gave us a fantastic closing thought, a simple but really profound quote that just captures the essence of this whole analysis.
Okay, let's end on that note then, that note of individual power.
It's simply, be yourself because an original is worth more than a copy.
Huh. Perfect.
Yeah.
Simple, but powerful.
A perfect summary, I thought. The cost of chasing that fleeting acceptance, whether it shows up as legal problems, physical harm, or just that awful psychological stress, it's simply too high a price to pay. True strength and those lasting bonds we all crave, they're built on autonomy and mutual respect, not on temporary conformity. We really hope this analysis gives you listening, the perspective, and maybe some tools to navigate those pressures with more confidence.
We genuinely do. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Party Animal Podcast. We hope this exploration gave you maybe a clearer perspective on the pressures you face or might face, and perhaps some of the wisdom required to resist them effectively.
And we really hope you check back in for future episodes. We'll be continuing to explore the nuances of social environments and personal well-being.
Please make sure to hit that like button, turn on notifications, and subscribe to help this podcast bring more awareness to others while enjoying an amazing time with others, minus the pitfalls.
See you next time.
Man, when I chat and chit, I come through like what's good, these wigs getting split. Man, better breeze than sprint, it's long if I choose to bite down on these pricks. X is a lyrical 4-4 and this, so make sure it's X that you wanna rally with. Oh, make a big man turn to a kid. Shout out skull when I splat up wigs. Never seeing X's with your eyes closed.